Hey, it's Rich McLean, alias Baron Dodger. Let me say, I've been an arsehole. But today's another day. I'm here on the earth and I'm here to try and make it better. So, have a listen to this story. It's getting some pretty good news in here, especially for the Banksia Unit at Royal Children's Hospital and the Lost Dogs Home. And also I've picked Melbourne City Mission and Incarceration Nation. When I get paid my detriment money, if this issue is acknowledged, I'm going to give each of those organisations $50,000. Here we go. Well, it's now kind of been proved with evidence on this page and my YouTube channel and my website that there's a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and that a phenomenon is at work directly linked to my public profile and my person. It's victimised me beyond all human rights, and this has caused my suicide attempt, from which I now have a cognitive brain impairment. And afterwards, the oppression got worse. I think I'm worth a lot of money because of my detriments haven't been paid. All of my payments have been consciously, maliciously and intentionally redacted from me, and I've been robbed by the system. All I need is a space in which this story is legend or validated, and then I'll be in prosperity, I'll be out of poverty, I can get my life back, I can be free from oppression and further victimisation, and I'll bankroll those who are pivotal to bringing to justice, and also those 4 charities that I just mentioned. A Bible quote from Ephesians says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." And I thought that was very apt. So let's be blunt. I had sex. It was consensual but regrettable teen folly. I did some drugs. I ran away. I made a dick of myself. I've been an arsehole. I was gullible. I let myself be taken advantage of. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I can now say with certainty there is a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. My life has been hard. The cops gay-hated me on me from the start. The Herald Sun vilified me. I was publicly humiliated. The Age fired me. Allen and Unwin published me and maybe unintentionally exploited me. My private world naively became public consumption, and I was never aware that people would treat me any differently. They destroyed my business website. They cancelled my ABN. They delayed, denied, deferred my child sexual abuse redress scheme until I was homeless. They took my insurances. They took my work cover, not 1 but 2. They threw out a child sexual abuse case at Geelong Magistrates Court. They told me I was doomed to fail. They violently beat me up in Footscray, and another time I was in hospital, they violently beat me up inside the hospital, and there was another cover-up. They oppressed me literally to death. I survived. They revived me. I was framed at the Ombudsman. They kept locking me up. I've been banned at AFCA. I've been banned at WorkSafe. They kept imprisoning me. They destroyed my home. They destroyed everything I own. They rubbished my drawings, my precious drawings. They made me homeless. They restricted my NDIS funds. The police shun me. Lawyers reject me. I'm a rejected whistleblower. They rejected not 1 but 2 work cover cases, I already said. And they threatened to kill me and my dog, and I can't report that to anyone. I live in a secret location. They forced medicated me for apparent delusions that are absolutely factual. The cops literally ran me out of town. I've been violently attacked. My dog and I were run over by a car. The hospital and police let my landlord destroy my possessions. They covered up my suicide attempt, that tragic day that I'm still recovering from. They removed my human rights. They took my access to the law and my equality before it, and that's in opposition to the Charter of Human Rights of the person with a disability that is the law in this country. They continue to vilify me. No one will stand for me. They have surveilled my home. They surveil my home as a person of interest. I'm rationally paranoid that I'm infamous. I wrote to every politician in the land and I still didn't get traction. My family and friends call me difficult and abusive, and they're half right. I've only been left with hate, disappointment and anger, but there is not literally anyone really left in my world. If I die, I lose, and then we all lose. But I will win, and this is how. I'm turning my shit sandwich of a life into a gourmet sandwich of love, healing, and forgiveness. When I made art, and I've been an artist all my life, I made it authentically and I hope beautifully. Art and drawing is an examination of a trauma or an issue that needs amplifying or resolving visually. It's with this metaphor that I confront my difficult situation of my profound victimisation and scapegoating and my oppressors in the demand of a transformation of currency into worth and love and connectivity. I want to find a solution to my impasse of my life, which is beautiful. I want to live and I want to make it beautiful. There is no other way. So I'm grateful for my life because I died, and it would have been a terrible thing, and mental illness would have been blamed to the exclusion of everything else. It was a result of shame, stigma and vilification. But on that day, in February 2021, I was resuscitated and I've lived another day, and then I finally have a chance to release all my anger and act with my heart in hope as I drew with my authenticity. I wish to draw again and I wish to love again. People have framed me as an extortionist for the sake of a malpractice case in 2017 and for how much I believe I'm owed, but this is incorrect. It's not extortion when the money's rightly yours, and it's totally okay to stand up for what you believe in and for your self-worth, especially after you've given so much in your life, like I have, over my life, in local, state, federal and international audiences and across TV and media as I have. The hope is with this video, I can finally live free from oppression and victimisation, and the victimisation is clear once you listen to this. In a matter of not hoarding any wealth beyond where my basic needs are met, I've created a trust in my new name, Baron Dodger. That's because I'm dodging the Baron. Get it? It's my intention to bankroll charities, support artists and creative folk from all diversity, and to recommit prosperity to those institutions that bring worth to Australia and Australian society. And you can judge that on my past fundraising events for places like the Royal Children's Hospital and my charity work. So I've been an advocate for those experiencing mental illness and their carers for 30 years. I wrote a Human Rights Award-winning book that was named Sane Australia's Book of the Year in 2002, and the book explicated a difficult youth with drugs, consensual sex, but regretful sex, and of course, I can see how the girl would be disappointed, especially after she became my muse in a public forum. But in hindsight, I can see the homophobia of the Victoria Police and the state of society not accepting of sexualities less a heteronormative one. My former place of work, the Herald Sun, vilified me and humiliated me when the book came out, and following that, The Age, where I was a news graphics artist and illustrator for 5 years in a job that I loved, fired me. It was the beginning of a lifetime of persecution, and some psychologists say schizophrenia is not a life sentence, but when you get the label, it is a life sentence. The label is the thing that gives you the trauma. The Herald Sun's defamatory article read, "My descent into madness, how schizophrenia stole Richard McLean's mind," and then put my words on it with a similarly outrageous picture. So that's the way I've been in the public domain anyway. Now, I lived with my former partner for 5 years, from 2010 to 15, and legally I'm owed a settlement, but the federal government protects my former partner, I think, because he was an ASIO employee. My former partner was earning $30,000-$40,000 a month, while I was coercively forced to accept a disability support pension of less than $500 per week, which I was grateful for, but it's clearly inequitable. It's clear in hindsight that I was exploited, especially after the chance discovery of my partner additionally claiming a carer's pension for being engaged to me to embolden his wealth and exploit my apparent illness. And I still feel for my former partner and his crimes, because he suffered sexual abuse on a scale much worse than mine, and the money had become his protector of a broken inner child. So in that way, I acted in a way that was fraudulent by claiming a pension for 5 years while engaged to be married. But that injustice is peanuts compared to me being forced to accept the pension by and exploited by him. It was malicious in its financial control. The control exists during the relationship and to this day, and I believe him being an ASIO employee under David Irvine is a reason of my victimisation and a conscious reduction of any and all prosperity from me. At the time, I acted ethically to dock myself in to Centrelink and without my partner's consent, and I declared the relationship. But then he said he demanded to say we broke up and go back on it. This is called financial control and family violence by means of coercive financial control, and it's never okay. And it's still going to this day, and every day that I live in poverty is another day that family violence wins. That was my family, Steve and I. The financial control to this day is still enacted out by him, and it's emboldened by a federal government that victimises me and rejects all prosperity. The government elongates and supports this. For example, the Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet refused to give my freedom of information. It's called freedom of information for a reason, and I'm supposed to have it. You can't just say no, but they did. Centrelink won't look into it, and neither will the police, although the police knew we lived together and were engaged. ASIC won't look into the corruption, and I did not mean to bring Steve harm like he harmed me, but I got a message saying that because he got done for embezzlement, he had to pay $1 million fine, and now he threatens to kill both me and my dog, and we live in fear and in hiding. So every day I live in poverty without a settlement is another day that family violence wins, and another day that the Australian government has exploited me for apparent madness, in effect throwing me under the bus. This is whilst Steve Iasonidis is protected by the likes of ASIO, Centrelink, the Tax Department, ASIO and AGIS, who refuse to investigate the exploitation. Very recently, ASIC has also refused to intervene. Every public service official has a responsibility to act ethically and within the Charter of Human Rights. But I have no human rights, and I'm opposed by a caste of thousands. I indeed suffer from mental illness, and it's an extra reason to help me and support me in all ways, not to vilify me as mad and fill me with pills to the exclusion of all other actual justice issues. The time to help me is now, before either me or my beloved dog Crystal are harmed or killed, or worse, or suicide from the ungodly victimisation and financial detriment. I literally starve, and I wish to say that I'm not suicidal, but the harm that's intended for me maliciously is really disturbing. Every spark of friendship and love will die without a home. I can't afford a home. I'm just squatting here. I need this to be legend and acknowledged, and I want to give back to the community, and I want to live, and I want to love again, and I want to make things okay, and I don't wish to do anyone any harm. I just wish to collect the detriments, give to charity, and move on. So my violence order for Steve was rejected. It was stated that they could not do anything if nothing's happened. Great. So I'm a rejected whistleblower at the Health Department, the Attorney General's Department, and the NDIS, and I can't remember what other department, the Federal Court. I can't go to police to report anything because I'm profiled, and in my 50 years I've never had a lawyer to take issues to task for a measurable outcome. I had a lawyer in John Boyle from MD Law recently, but now after engaging with me for over 6 months and never arriving at any justice despite being directed to ask for settlements for all of my issues, Mr. Ball then dumped all of my cases, and I wanted my evidence back, and he's holding me to ransom unless I pay $50,000. Mr. Ball's actions are abhorrent in that he exploited a vulnerable person with a mental illness, got someone who was broke, who couldn't afford it, charged him $50,000, and has a cognitive brain disorder, who was homeless, and extracted his evidence and then billed him for no result, and now is holding me for ransom. It's not kind, and it's not ethical. Good one, John. Human Rights Charter for a person with a disability says that a disabled person must have equality before the law and access to the law, but neither is true for me, neither. And as a democratic citizen of the country with a clean criminal record, I've been banned from AFCA, causing massive financial detriment and further homelessness. Tim Goss, head of service delivery, was recorded delaying, denying, deferring my justice when he well knew that it was 6 weeks to get a marginalised person's case to the Ombudsman, and mine took over 1.5 years. It was malicious, and it was intentional, and it was conscious. He's also an ombudsman there. The system had victimised me to such a degree that I lost my home and everything in it. Like I said, the Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet refused my freedom of information, which would reveal my advocacy role and my former partner, they stated that documents can't be found or don't exist. And the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner reported it to be said that my FOI was rejected or not acknowledged by the Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet. Not good. And herein lies another difficulty. I made a complaint about a GP in 2017 over a malpractice case in which I overdosed, and the GP's lawyer was Russell Ball. Now, Russell Ball is a lawyer who informs government policy and advises the Ombudsman. And since then, I've been exploited as mad and vilified and victimised politically and systemically, and that's caused so much detriment. This is despite enormous efforts made by me, but I've never been able to engage a lawyer for my many justice issues, and I know that I'm psychometrically profiled by all legal places. As soon as my name or number comes up, they redact any help whatsoever. This victimisation has caused detriment in economic, physical, emotional and other ways, such as everything I own being destroyed. Victimisation is actually against the law. The law has been broken, and it's been broken by many public officials in regards to me. I applied for the CDDC scheme for compensation for the financial detriment at AFCA and the Australian Human Rights Commission, where they free-kicked a $1.5 million settlement to the opposition in a totally non-partial resolution. And my work cover at the Department of Finance was my work cover too. And this was at the Department of Finance, and my CDD scheme for compensation was rejected. And so is my potential act of grace payment from the federal government. This profound discrimination and vilification that robbed me and identified me as of being ill to the exclusion of all other factors led, yes, to my suicide attempt, and that happened inside Werribee Mercy Hospital in February 2021. It was described in the Hospital Freedom of Information as a fatal injury and a lethal attempt, and my heart stopped, from which I now suffer a cognitive brain impairment that affects my memory and my ability to organise myself. And I am grateful I lived. I'm glad I didn't die angry, because this is a chance to put it right. But no one has stood up for me after that. I tried to stand up for my right to be safe and live and have compensation, but there is now a cover-up with the hospital who owed me a duty of care to keep me safe. Further, there is a cover-up in government agencies not to compensate me for the injury, and I fought this at the following places: the Health Complaints Commissioner, the Mental Health Complaints Commissioner, the Police, IBAC, NHPOPC, APRA, and the Commonwealth Ombudsman and the NDIS, and I'm a failed whistleblower at the Commonwealth Ombudsman, and that's where our old mate, Russell Ball, informs. There was a uniform whitewashing of a real tragedy where I was owed a duty of care from which I have an injury. The local health clinic then said there was an impasse and severed all contact with me in the community. That is because until I began to ruffle some feathers in Canberra, and again I was re-traumatised and put into hospital. And they keep re-traumatising me, putting me into hospital, and I don't need to be in there. I was then vilified by the police, and with the Mental Health Act, they threatened me with incarceration and to catch me. And despite me being owed all this money in settlements and insurance and other compensations and detriments, they used that Mental Health Act to threaten me, and they literally used it to run me out of my home and out of the area. I actually got in my car, I got my dog, and I left. And I stayed in hostels trying to hide from the police, but I'm pretty sure they might have known where I was. This was a political scapegoating, whereby my prosperity was actively, consciously and maliciously withheld from me, and then I was run out of town. And I couldn't pay rent, I was squatting, and under the threat of incarceration, I ran out of town, and on one morning my dog and I were literally run over in the street by an out of control car when we went for a walk to go for a wee, and we were both injured. I got up and left the scene before the police arrived, and I was thrown right across the road and lost my glasses. as I could not afford to be sectioned by the police into the same awful environment where my tragedy occurred. I'm unsure. Then again, it may have been a government car that may have maimed me. My leg still does not work properly, and I really don't know if these accidents are coincidental or not. I've actually got footage of the Secret Service outside my house, surveilling my house as well. So I know I'm under investigation. I'm fearful I'm an infamous person. I just want to get this over the line. I just can't get it through my head that this much harm and this much intelligence has gone into victimising me. I just can't believe it. It baffles my head. So the police finally waited till I returned to my squat, and then proceeded to violently kick in the door, cuff me and hospitalise me basically as a political prisoner for 2.5 months. While incarcerated, Werribee Mercy Hospital and the police oversaw Hung Ho of Edithvale, my now former landlord, destroy everything I owned by clearing out the house and taking everything I owned to the tip. That was my precious drawings. That was my documents, my passport, my clothes, my fridge, my antiques and prints, and my beloved photos of my nana. With nowhere to go, Werribee Mercy Hospital then rejected me into a homeless shelter with just the clothes on my back. How dare you? At the same time, this victimisation occurred. This is conservatively what I was owed at the time of the financial persecution and political scapegoating at that time. This is what I reckon I was owed in conservative ways of looking at it. 250 grand from a former partner settlement, easy. He had $1 million in super. My $75,000 HCF income assistant was never paid, easy. I've got the evidence that my illness was not pre-existing. 250 grand impairments benefit from 2006 work cover case. I've got the evidence of that. My work cover entitlements from 2021 never came, and that's still held up at the AAT, and that'd be easy 250 grand. It's probably a total permanent disability now. I'll never work in the same capacity again. And there was an 83,000 from an extra unit of cover from an insurance claim in 2008, which I did get. I reckon I could get, I don't know how much, really, $1,000 for compensation for my brain detriment. And a normal compensation case for a malpractice case is up around 400 grand. So let's just put 50 grand there. There was a $19,000 Bendigo Bank issue. That's like over $1.25 million. And it's really hard to imagine to this day. I still cannot get a lawyer. I cannot go to the police, and I'm a rejected whistleblower already at the federal court and health department. This is what scapegoating is. It makes it impossible to get ahead. It is a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and it's not like I haven't cried out for help. I've got a bloody YouTube channel dedicated to it, and I've emailed every statutory agency in the country by now, but because of my brain detriment, I keep forgetting who I've already contacted, and in my confusion which people knew, and they just take advantage of me forgetting, and I do forget. It's shit. It's a shit situation. So I've been robbed of my prosperity, my job, my website, robbed of my passions, I don't draw anymore, and of my equality before the law and access to it. This is in opposition of all ethical underpinnings of Australian democracy and the Charter of Human Rights for a person with a disability. I still have not been paid work cover since February 2021, not a cent. Despite being contracted to a Victorian statutory work authority, despite being contracted to a Victorian statutory authority, WorkSafe have now banned me, directed me to Comcare. Comcare at first rejected my psychological injury on those grounds, but then changed the reason to I was not an employee for the purposes of the SRC Act. And when my case fails, and I've already predicted to Michaelia Cash that it would, and she wouldn't intervene, I'll have the opportunity to lodge an appeal at the federal court. I'm already a rejected whistleblower at the federal court, and when they told me that in a letter, they also unwittingly stated that they are satisfied and I'm an employee of the DSS. So this alone should get my work cover detriment paid. And if it's ruled that I was not an employee for the purposes of the SRC Act, despite the federal court statement, then where am I insured? Like, One would think my HF income insist would have helped, but this too was rejected. Then I was banned from contacting them, or I could be arrested because of an anti-violence order on a person I don't even know and I've never even met. The Workplace Minister, Danny Pearson, returned my protest email about this, but did not conclude payment. It is legislation that if liability is not determined, then it's the responsibility of the Minister or the agency within 21 days of the claim being made. So where's the money and my care to return to work? And this is the legislation. 93. Provisions to apply where employer does not meet liabilities. 1. If the employer of the worker neglects, refuses or is unable to pay compensation in discharge of the employer's liability under section 72(1 within 21 days of receiving the claim for payment of compensation, the liability becomes the liability of the authority. And that means Danny Pearson should be intervening to pay me and help me get back to work. It's just so shit. It's legislation. You can't argue with that. That alone, I shouldn't have to be giving him heaps of money away to charities. Money means nothing to him, but I can't live without it. I need to be paid my compensation and my work cover. It's as simple as that. I reckon I've proven my worth and intelligence many times by selflessly advocating for others, but now I'm vilified for being mad or having mental illness and consciously redacted all prosperity, not just one thing, but from many different angles, and robbed because of it. And it's a universal victimisation. So many people are aware this is going on. There are so many people who are guilty of victimising me, and I can't believe no one's crossed the floor yet. I'm like, was there a law when I fell out of the tree that I was never going to get justice in my life, no matter what? It's just, I can't get it through my head. So I'm a clear scapegoat of the Australian democracy and not treated as an equal citizen deserving of many ministers' attentions as other Australians are. The Attorney General Mark Dreyfus refuses to acknowledge me or my emails or calls. And not being able to go to the police or make a report, it's putting me and my dog's life at risk from the death threats I receive, and even of potential suicide, as I'm not immune to the risk. I've overdosed once and actually killed myself another time. Anyone would think that if you make life hard for me, it's going to be really bad, like you want to cause me harm. I just can't get it through my head. So many people want to cause me harm. I just can't understand it. So anyway, the following points of interest have come to pass, and although I can't 100% say it's a conspiracy or anyone believe me, these issues I'll now render a phenomenon that is evidence of me being victimised in the most brutal of ways. Okay, we'll start off with Debbie Mitchell, authorised person for the public interest disclosure at the NDIS. She rejected my PAYID and then refused to change her mind. She said it's not within her remit to change her mind. That's rubbish. Russell Ball silenced the evidence of a malpractice case at the following places while he informs government policy and advises the Ombudsman. He silenced a transcript of the recording as well that was already legal tender. He silenced a Millennium Medical Centre, Health Complaints Commissioner, Mental Health Complaints Commissioner, the Police, IBAC, the Victorian Inspectorate, APRA, NHPAPC, and the Ombudsman. John Boyle, the MD, the lawyer, he charged me $50,000 for nothing and then extorted me. The Herald Sun fired me and vilified me. That's got to do with my case, surely. The Age fired me and used discrimination. The Cunningham Dax collection, where my art collection was, exploited me. Sane Australia, they exploited me. Allen and Unwin, I'm sure they meant well, but they exploited me too. Werribee Mercy Hospital, Dean Stevenson, oppression and silence a suicide injury. It's an injury in a hospital. I went there not to die. I died there. It's got to be a case. Saltwater Clinic at Footscray, Cade Mollison, he silenced a suicide injury and he oppresses me and victimises me. Centrelink denied my pension. The institutional child sexual abuse, they're using delay, deny, defer tactics despite enormous evidence to the contrary, and it should be ruled straight away. Legal Aid haven't ever provided me with one lawyer. The Law Institute of Victoria, no traction. Villamanta didn't respond to my plea. Mental Health Legal Centre ignored my emails. Vimiac ignored me. It just goes on and on. I won't go on too long. Bendigo Bank cancelled a $20,000 complaint. VOCAT cancelled my sexual abuse claim. HCF Sheena Jack rejected income assist. The ACCC neglected settlement. Health Super and AIA gaslit me and cancelled insurance. Tim Goss, he elongated my injustice and banned me from being at AFCA. At the Australian Human Rights Commission, Liz Lindbergh, she non-partially ruled a $1.5 million settlement to the opposite team. And I know the government's involved because after the government was out of the way and I lost it, I went straight to the company and they gave me a settlement. ASIC won't investigate the exploitation. APRA rejected the PAYID and FOI. Steve Iasonidis exploited me, he's got threats to kill. ASIO upheld Iasonidis' exploitation. AGIS won't investigate ASIO. The Victorian Legal Bar asked them why it is I can't get a lawyer, no response. Deborah Glass, Ombudsman, no response. Ben Calder, Ombudsman, whitewashed the brain injury and the suicide, and he depresses me there. The Attorney General's Office rejected my PID. Mark Dreyfus refused to acknowledge me. The NDIS locked up my funds and fired me. The Tax Department cancelled my ABN. The NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission fired me and cancelled my contract. Bill Shorten, NDIS Minister, no response from him. Micron 21, a company affiliated with the government, maliciously destroyed my website. The Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman silenced the destruction of my website, and business.gov did too. The Telecommunications Industry Ombudsman, they silenced the destruction of the website. You can't just get someone's business and just destroy it. Just go, sorry, we don't want it, goodbye. That's unheard of. That's like getting Telstra.com and saying, oh, I'm just going to take Telstra.com down. That was the architecture of my business and the way I made money. Footscray Police, they assaulted me, silenced the suicide attempt, bullied me out of my home, chased me out of town. The Mental Health Tribunal medicates me for what? My delusions. Funny that. IBAC refused whistleblower status, Police Freedom of Information refused. The Federal Court of Australia refused the PID. WorkSafe banned me. Danny Pearson, the Work Cover Minister, failed to act despite the legislation. Comcare gets corruption. They rejected my work cover. Paul Fowler was the name of the guy. He was the old boss at WorkSafe, who have now banned me for even contacting them. The Fair Work Commission didn't help. The unions, they didn't help me. The AAT, they're denying my work cover decision. And I've already got the evidence from the federal court that I'm an employee. What the hell? Kate Watson, she's a government lawyer acting outside the Charter of Human Rights for Persons with a Disability and way outside the ethics of even being a lawyer by opposing me at the AAT when she knows I can't get a lawyer. The Commonwealth Ombudsman closed my complaint. The Federal Police did not investigate my claims. Office of Prime Minister and Cabinet refused my freedom of information. Attorney General Michaeli Cash rejected my whole spiel and sent me to the same helpline because, that's where mad people go. The Attorney General Mark Dreyfus refused to intervene or acknowledge me at all. And right up to Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, he rejected to help me. I just can't believe it. That's not coincidence. That's just not a whole lot of misfortune happening. That's a conscious and malicious systemic political problem in this country, and I'm its unfortunate victim, and I'm a scapegoat. That is a fact. Public officials, including parliamentarians, are required to act within a human rights charter and always act ethically. It is within the remit of every parliamentarian to act now in a political way to avoid further systemic injustice to me and an even closer potential tragedy that wouldn't just be another suicide, it would be state-sanctioned murder. I'm not suicidal, by the way. I'm going to get through this. My problem won't be fixed until I'm paid and I'm out of poverty, and there are ways that can happen. 1. Force my work cover to be paid. 2. Force a settlement with my former partner. 3. Force HCF to pay for my income assistance. 4. Force a settlement with a institutional child sexual abuse scheme. 5. Find me a lawyer who can defend my many injustices. 6. Protect me from the brewing violence threat. At least make a ruling for an intervention order against people so they can't find me and harm me. That's the least you can do. And it's been a long story. I'm nearly finished. Well, and the good side, of course, to acknowledging all this, and I don't want to do anyone any harm. I don't want to do anyone any harm. Not the way harm's done to me. And the good side to acknowledging this story, and the shit sandwich that is my life and I'm going to turn into a luscious kebab, is that I shall be donating the vast majority of my funds outside of my safety and security to charity, and I'm going to bankroll what I myself have been grateful to do in my life, and that's for people to make art. And as a writer, I hope you also appreciate the years of suffering that have transpired in my journey and the gratefulness for which I know, if I know I'm listened to, I can turn this around to be of service to society again. I look forward to a simple and protected life with my dog and I, away from this disproportionate neglect from all authorities, agencies, politicians, lawyers, and finally I will have come full circle. My pain will have been transformed from pain into a monetary currency, into a form that fosters love, hope and creativity. And for this, I'm grateful that I've assumed the role of some kind of transformational expert. With that, I might just add the following donations to charity once my detriments are paid, and I encourage people from these organisations to fact check my story and demand that I get an acknowledgement from the authorities and my discrepancies paid, and that I can have some justice and some freedom from oppression. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and I've just taken a really, really shit situation and I'm making good with it. And I'm sorry for being a bastard for all the people that have come across me, but you know, it's been a very trying time and not one person has crossed the floor to help me, or barely anyone. And I'm still making YouTube videos protesting this shit. Anyway, it's going to be $50,000 to the Banksia Unit at the Royal Children's Hospital, where I fundraised with my book Broken the Monster. There's going to be $50,000 to the Lost Dogs Home in Melbourne. There's going to be $50,000 to Melbourne City Mission, who helps homeless people and marginalised people, often the victims of situations like me. And there's going to be $50,000 to Incarceration Nation, a place that helps incarcerated Indigenous people, because you know racism exists. Or I shouldn't say racism because there's only one race, the human race, but you know that kind of discrimination really affects someone. And you know, if you look down on all your life, of course you're going to get yourself into trouble. And I think that everyone who wants a second chance should get a second chance. And there's more to come, but please give me a second chance to have a home, to be safe, and to be able to give back to the community. And please call this for what it is: a conspiracy to avert the cause of justice. I'm not deserving of this treatment, and I wanted to